various successive governments and various governments around the world sort of seize upon ISPs as being a convenient sort of choke point or gatekeeper point on the net, and they would love for ISPs to become judge, jury, policeman, posse, hangman, the whole deal, and I think it's a very inappropriate thing to do.
And the reality is that we are just a gatekeeper, but we don't own the content, we only own the doorway.
That ISPs could somehow or other filter the internet is, one, technically impossible, and two is a bad idea anyway. Is that if you wanted to filter the net, to filter out all of the bad guys on the net, quite apart from the fact that you can't do it, you would need to pass a lot of legislation, a huge package of legislation.
The question in this is how far the government wants to go with it. What they're suggesting at the moment is the creation of a small blacklist which would include content that is RC, rated RC, so refused classification in the Australian context. And under that scheme then it's something that may actually work. Filtering through a small list of IP addresses or URLs is viable.
Two problems with that, obviously. One is collateral damage. What if that IP address is a virtual host with 2,000 websites on it and only one of them doesn't follow the government's morality? And that'll obviously happen. The other one is, what if it's done by mistake? If the IP address is just straight out wrong. And the third obvious one is that the internet's full of anonymous proxies. None of this stuff actually works.
The definition of safe for a 6-year-old is very different from that for a 15-year-old. The other one is it's a very subjective assessment. For some parents, they may consider information about homosexuality to be a real problem, but for some other parents, they may consider that to be entirely appropriate. Nudity in art may be appropriate for one set of parents, but not for another. And there's endless examples, perhaps around religious tolerance as well.
If the federal government are going to say, we are going to stop certain sorts of objectionable content, what on earth is the definition of bad here? Is it the federal government's definition of bad? Is this going to be, a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant filtering system? Is it going to be a Muslim filtering system? Is it going to be one that doesn't like Scientology? The problem is that we live in a world with multiple sets of morality, all of them equally valid.
Now, those things are household decisions, and therefore I guess our position's always been that the parent should have the ability to be able to do that and to filter at their end. So client-end filtering works. It works reasonably well. Still doesn't provide you with an entirely safe environment, but at least it means the parent has some control over what the child's viewing. Trying to do that at the ISP, you're asking us to make decisions for the entire country.
The scary things are the take-up of these systems are almost zero. Scary for the government in a policy sense, because people actually don't want them. There's no strong evidence that they do want them. They want a sense that the internet is not a scary place for their kids to be, but that's a question of solving it in other ways. Solving it with education, solving it with the pragmatic thing that we certainly do at home, is sticking the kid's computer in the living room.
I do worry, as a civil libertarian by background, I do worry that this is the thin end of the wedge, that the government will come in with a small list of sites for the ISPs to block, and that just includes the real stuff that everyone agrees on, like child porn and bestiality. And so we say, okay, we're willing to comply with that. But it becomes an area then that can be used for so much more. So you might see the next step is an attempt to block out XXX sites or hate speech sites. You think, okay, well, maybe that we can live with that. But then after that, it could be to block out competing political positions, or to block out sites about religion or sexual orientation that the government says is no longer suitable for children in Australia. And I guess, as we said, there's firstly the question about the network capability to be able to do that, but there's also more the whole ethical position of how appropriate is it for the Australian government to start acting and feeling like the Chinese government? And that list, is it going to be publicly available? Is anyone else going to have access to be able to see what's being blocked?
And as usual, the fallacy here is that most families diagnose their computer problems by getting their children to fix them. So their children will know about anonymous proxies. They will work around this stuff. So it's not that it's not a problem to solve, but you can't make it a technical game because the very people you're trying to protect are smarter than you.
There's a large push here to try and make the ISPs responsible for what you download. And I think the people who are pushing that just have no concept of the volume of traffic, the sheer volume of traffic that's passing through the network, and how easy it is to hide what the conduct is anyway from the ISP.
If we start doing things like cutting people off on the basis of doing file sharing, for example, we could actually finish up breaking laws by doing that, and we could certainly render ourselves liable to being sued for wrongfully cutting people off or those kinds of things. You need frameworks for these things.
If you want to stop people breaking the law, then firstly you tell them how to get access to the stuff they want without breaking the law. You let them know that they are breaking the law, and then finally you actually prosecute them if they continue to violate. And it's the same as you would for any other crime.
If you look at the music industry's gripes, the music industry would love to say, look, let's get the ISPs to catch all the people who are file sharing, write them a letter, and if they don't stop file sharing, then cut them off. Well, we could do that if there were a law, but the music industry needs to go and get the law in place and go through all of the process and through all of the sort of the forensic examination which society will undertake to say, is that a good idea or a bad idea? And I think that if that happens, society will probably decide it's actually not that good of an idea. For example, if you appear on my network as a file sharer and I go, well, I'm going to cut you off if you keep on file sharing because I reckon you're knocking off people's copyright. And you write back to me and go, no, Justin, it wasn't me. And then again, I look at your traffic and you're still file sharing. I do that 3 times, I write to you 3 times, you deny it 3 times, and I go, right, well, I'm cutting you off. So now you're cut off. But what if, for example, your wife or girlfriend was trying to get her exam in on time? What if you were running a small business there? What if I destroyed your income because of that? And what if it really wasn't you? What if it was somebody who was sitting outside your premises actually getting in on your inappropriately secured, say, Wi-Fi network, so that they were doing file sharing on your account, but actually they were pinching their way in there? Or what if there was somebody who'd even gone further and they'd penetrated your computer for the purposes of file sharing and you were unwitting in the whole thing? Now,
neither the ISP nor the copyright owner necessarily have the ability to determine the customer's broken the law. The party you should hand that to is the federal police and say to them, these customers have broken the law, I want them prosecuted. They can then come back to the ISP and they've got a particular form that they can give us, which means we then have to reveal the identity of the customers to them under the Telecommunications Act.
Big Point, of course, complies with all laws, and when law enforcement agencies come to us with a warrant or a document which says, I've been to court and the court has decided that we've got reasonable grounds to believe that this guy is a terrorist, for example, or a peddler of child pornography or whatever it might be, and we want you to help us catch him, then we go, certainly, sir, no problem at all, and we comply with the law. Now, we're protected by the law, and due processes happen, appropriate processes happened.
If we get an interception request from the spooks, we've got to intercept stuff. But all we can do is hand them packets. If the packets are end-to-end encrypted, we can't do a thing to help. We don't know what it is. We can't block it because we can't classify it.